This report in the Herald Sun that the independents could dominate the state election. The Greens, the Teals, and there's a new party called the Victorians Party, which could have a number of seats as well. Then there's Bernard Finn looking for DLP seats in the upper house. The Herald Sun's saying Victorians Party could win up to 10 seats in the Victorian election. Bill Lang, small business lobbyist, is one of the founders. Small Business Australia is with one of the founders of the Victorians Party. My question to you, 133693, are you so down on Matthew Guy and Daniel Andrews that you would vote independent? Are you looking for options? Because people certainly were during the federal election and told me in very loud voice. Bill Lang, good morning.
Yeah, g'day, Neil.
You reckon you could get 10 seats?
Look, the groundswell, the grassroots movement, Neil, since we started doing research at the end of last year to see whether there was an appetite and what people were looking for in more effective politicians, came through loud and clear that 1 in 2 Victorians have had enough of the career politicians, and they'd like to see some people representing them that come from the real world, have had real responsibility, understand how things work, that live locally or work locally, and will put the interests and the major issues of the majority of people first, and the interests of Victorians overall first, as opposed to their own career progress in their political party, hanging on to power or whatever it might be, Neil.
So do you reckon you can get 10 seats, is what I asked?
Absolutely. So this is a people movement. It's growing by the day. We already saw in the federal election that we have a new government that only 1 in 3 people really wanted to be the government. As I said, 1 in 2 Victorians truly want to change Victoria. They will vote for a new party with a fresh approach, which is what the Victorians Party is, Neil.
But in the end, you're going to have to support one of the majors. If that happens, if you get 10 seats and they'll have to form a minority government, you'll have to support one of them, won't you? Which one?
Look, our approach, Neil, to what they call preferencing is we're going to look at the candidates in each of the 88 lower house seats and see which of them have got policies and action plans for the local area that are locals and that are going to make sure that they actually implement those things. And we'll make our decisions on who we're supporting then, as opposed to having some carte blanche across the board, particular point of view on it.
Yeah, but that's preferencing. What do you do if you get 10 seats and the election is done and dusted and neither Labor nor Liberal can rule without you? Who do you support?
Well, I think we'll make the decision about that when we get to that rather than the hypothetical, Neil. People are going to make their decisions on who they're going to vote for based on the policies and the high-quality local candidates that we're putting forward. And we'll have a clear view on that, when it counts, which is in the last couple of weeks of November.
Oh, okay. So you will tell us before the election who you would be willing to negotiate with?
Yeah, we'll have a clear view based on the policies, the candidates. If the candidates are ring-ins or they're being parachuted into a bunch of seats, it's very unlikely we'd ever be supporting parties that are doing that across the board. Very unlikely, Neil.
Okay, tell me your view of Matthew Guy.
I don't know Matthew personally. He's a very experienced career politician. And so Matthew, as all of them that have only spent their life living and working as career politicians, have the same challenges that all of them have, far removed from the everyday life of everyday Victorians, the majority of Victorians, as opposed to those that receive pay rises during the pandemic.
So what's your view of Daniel Andrews? Same.
Oh, he's a career politician, and I think there's actually no democracy at work with the Labor Party in Victoria for the last couple of years. The members don't even have a say, and I think he doesn't want them to have any say going forward. And look, they suffer from being the sort of show up and throw up brigade, Neil. They show up and they throw up all over the people, or they tell and sell.
What do they show up and throw up?
Yeah, show up and throw up. Like, you ever had a meeting with a politician where they actually asked questions and listened, that they were using their ears more than their mouths? So no, our approach is we're going to be asking Victorians over the next 3 months what's most important to them in their local areas, what do they want to see done, and then rolling all of that up into the Victorians' approach to represent the people and let the people come back and balance the power that these career politicians have got.
What about key policies, though? I mean, what are your policies on lockdowns, on those sort of things? Lockdowns are probably gone, but what's your policy on the pandemic?
Well, yeah, the pandemic legislation needs to be removed. It provides way too much power to the government, and we saw the dirty dealing that was done by the so-called independent, so-called minor parties with respect to that legislation being passed. But, cost of living is the number one issue out there in the community amongst the majority of Victorians. They look around and they see waste at local government. They see waste on every single government project. They know that more taxes, higher taxes are coming. Victoria is the most expensive place to live on any measure in Australia, yet we're the most concentrated with a population deal. Like, it just doesn't make sense. They're out of control.
What about suburban rail loop?
Can't see the population jumping up and down saying they want it, let alone when have they ever delivered a project on time and on budget of that substantive nature. Secondly, we have, of course, major changes now to the way people are interacting with public transport, with coming into the city as to where they need to move. They're being great to citizens. They're being buying local. They're living local. We're going to have a good look at all those sorts of things. But can Victoria really afford it?
Can you fix the city?
What's needed for the city is a vision, starting with the biggest employer, and the biggest employer is the Victorian government. There are a number of solutions to get the city back on its feet, but it's not like waving the white flag, which is effectively what the government's done now.
All right. Now, you actually are serious about this. It's not just to cause some irritation. You really reckon you can get some seats?
Neil, we are absolutely serious, and there are literally 3.6 million Victorians voted in the last state election, Neil. Now, over 50% of them are sick of these professional career politicians.
Where do you keep getting that 50%? What's the poll?
We've done more than 10,000 interviews over the last 12 months with Victorians with respect to their level of trust and level of support and what they're looking for in politicians. And here's what they tell us, Neil. They say, hey, no more politicians that have spent their whole life in politics working in politicians' offices too. No more journalists, right? No more Darren Hinches and things in their parties. No more journalists, Neil.
No, I'm with you.
You've got a great program. You've been the voice of the people of Melbourne and Victoria for decades, and yet where is the Premier of Victoria? He never fronts up. He never tells the truth. Well, he may not recall, he and his government. I don't recall. 1 in 2 Victorians will recall come November the 26th, Neil.
You got money? Money to campaign?
We've got people coming from every walk of life and joining the party and becoming members. So the grassroots level, the level of volunteers, and we will have adequate resources to ask and listen and then communicate practical plans from real locals to represent the locals.
You just said Daniel Andrews never tells the truth, so there's no way you're going to support him if he's looking for votes, are you?
Time will tell, Neil, but as we move closer, as I said, we'll have our point of view in those couple of weeks before with respect to what's going on. But there's a groundswell movement. People want a real choice. A lot of people have just given up hope. They believe that that Daniel Andrews and the Labor Party that he controls is unbeatable, unsurmountable, and we do not believe that that is the case.
Okay, thanks for your time. We'll keep in touch. Bill Lang, co-founder of the Victorians Party, which, according to Herald Sun figures, could actually play a role in the next election. Long way to go. And I don't think the Teals will, because I think the Teals were based on 2 issues and they're both federal, and I don't think they're going to find those issues here. DLP, well, they could affect Labor or Liberal. Greens, yeah, they'll probably pick up some ground. I just think it's a totally different situation. A lot of people will feel they've got their protest out of the way with the federal election, so we'll go back to vote Labor or Liberal, one or the other. But it is a volatile electorate, as they like to say. Anything could happen.